create a competition, select Competition Management, add competition, and select the competition format. The majority of cricket competitions will be home and away. In a home and away competition, each team nominates a home venue, and when fixtures are created, games are allocated to these venues. Domestic competitions are when games are all played at a centralised venue, and tournament-style competitions are generally smaller in duration and contain pools. For today's session, we will focus on home and away competitions. Enter the name of your competition. For example, junior or senior competition. You do not need to include the season name at this point, as each competition contains multiple seasons and we will complete this step later. Select the most appropriate format for your competition. To ensure that people can see your competition's fixtures and results on public sites, ensure Visible is selected. However, during the setup phase, you may want to keep the competition as hidden. You have the option to turn new player approval on and select whether you will allow clubs to approve new players. If enabled, the new player approval allows for all new players at an association to be made pending until reviewed and approved by an association or club administrator. A pending player cannot be added to a team. Only once a participant is approved, they become active and can be added to a team. Players are deemed to be new if this is their first registration to competition-based cricket. Once you have completed this page, select Next in the top right-hand corner. Next, you enter your game and grade default settings. These settings will apply to all grades you create within your competition. We'd recommend selecting the settings which will apply to the majority of your grades. When it is time to create your grades, you can update each of these settings at the grade level. For example, an A-grade competition may have very different rules compared to your other grades. We will now create these settings for each of your game types: 2020, 1 day, and 2 day plus games. If your competition does not use one or more of these game types, that's fine. You can quickly proceed by selecting Next in the top right-hand corner. You can also come back and edit these settings at any stage. You will see lots of settings with toggle buttons within the game and grade default pages. To update any of these settings, just select the toggle. When the setting is turned on, the toggle will be green. We will start with 2 day game settings. Select the number of playing days from the drop-down box and select the game slot time per day. This will help you with fixturing, as it will block out the amount of time selected at a particular venue. If you have a compulsory closed limit, toggle this setting on and you will be asked to set the number of overs. Select the max batter allowed per innings. This setting will ensure that when a scorecard is completed, only the number of batters selected here can be added to the scorecard or the eScore device. Lineup limits allow you to set a minimum and a maximum number of players required for a game. Limits are helpful to ensure teams have the necessary number of players for a game to proceed. Use the drop-down box to adjust the minimum and maximum number of players. If teams do not meet these limits when adding players to their lineups, they will not be able to save their team selection. It may be important in 2 day cricket for you to increase the max number of players allowed in the lineup to allow for changes between days of play. Coach lineup limits work the same as your player lineup limits. Set the minimum and maximum amount of coaches required before a game can proceed. For example, it may be mandatory that all your teams have at least one coach. Again, a team's lineup cannot be saved unless the coach limits are met. Player positions can be turned on to enable clubs to assign wicket keepers at the time they select their team. Enforcing player positions will require teams to select a wicketkeeper before they are able to save their lineup. When a player is assigned as a wicketkeeper, this will appear publicly. Next, we will enter settings which will flow through to any electronic scoring devices. This means scorers on game day will not have to enter these settings. They will automatically be applied to appropriate games. Scorers will not be able to make any updates or adjustments. Firstly, select the legal balls per over and the max balls per over. enter the maximum number of overs per bowler. Next, enter the batter settings. These are particularly important in junior cricket. Set the limit of balls batters can face or runs they can make before they are required to retire in an innings, and set the number of times they can be dismissed in an innings. Toggle on if you would like batters to automatically swap strike once a wicket is taken. Toggle on if you would like the last batter to stand. This means when the last wicket falls, the last batter can continue to bat on their own. If you would like the game to continue once the target total is reached, toggle on Continue Scoring when target total is reached. Note that player statistics, team totals, and ladders will include these additional statistics, but the game result will not change. Enter the value of a wide and if wides will count as a ball faced. If reball wides is selected, this will extend the number of balls in an over. Complete the same settings for no balls. Next, enter your ladder settings, noting this will be for 2-day plus games only. Each game type can have their own individual ladder that will feed into an overall grade ladder across all game types. Associations can choose the sport default or customize the amount of points awarded to teams for all game outcomes. To see the amount of points awarded for each outcome, select the information icon. To award a different amount of points to the sport default, select Custom and select the amount from each of the drop-down lists. When game results are entered, teams will be awarded ladder points as set out here, depending on the outcome of the game. The ladder ranking order will determine how the teams will be sorted on your ladder. The default will be set at sorting teams based on ladder points average first. If your association uses ladder points, you can select this from the drop-down menu under First Sort Order. In the subsequent sort orders, you can select from all other ladder columns. Use the checkboxes to determine which columns you would like to appear on the public ladder. If you award bonus points, toggle on either automatic, manual, or both. Enter the automatic bonus points awarded for runs and wickets based on each innings, and with no intervention required, these points will be added to the ladder at the completion of a game based on the scores entered. If manual bonus points are toggled on, it will allow the scorer or administrator to enter manual bonus points against a team at the completion of a game. You can then select the variation of bonus points a scorer or administrator could apply. Finally, select if these bonus points will apply to the overall ladder. If toggled off, they will only be applied to the 2-day ladder for a grade. Regrading configuration determines how a team's points will be managed if they are regraded. Depending on your association's rules, points from a previous grade can be carried over into a team's new grade, or they can be left behind so a team who is regraded will start from 0. The ladder visibility settings will determine whether your ladders display on the public site. It is quite common in junior grades to keep ladders hidden from the public. Again, noting we can do this for specific grades later rather than the whole competition. You can also update the visibility settings during regrading or when making ladder adjustments. Once you've completed the 2-day settings, select Next in the top right-hand corner. We will now complete the same task for 1-day games where many of the settings are the same, however the values may differ. One setting that exists in 1-day and 2020 is super overs. Toggle on if super overs are used in tied games and then select if that is for all tied games or just in finals games. As you can see, the remaining settings are the same as the 2-day games. Continue to work through the settings for 1-day and 2020 games, making the relevant changes where necessary. Remember, we can edit these settings at any stage or make changes to individual grades as required. Lastly, we will enter the grade default settings for the overall grade. Similar to how we entered the ladder ranking order for each game type, we can now do the same for the overall ladder. Associations can enter how much access clubs will have to enter results from the club access settings. In most cases, associations will grant access to clubs to enter scores, but associations do have the ability to turn this setting off. You are able to give clubs a minimum of 1 hour and a maximum of 120 hours to enter results post the game start time. After this time, games will be locked and clubs will not be able to enter results or make any changes to a game. After the lockout period, associations are able to make changes to a game, or associations do have the ability to open up access to a particular game for 24 hours if a club needs to make an edit. If a time frame for entering results is not needed, you can select End of Season from the drop-down menu. Depending on your association, clubs may have access to enter player lineups and stats for their own team or both teams. If own team is selected, clubs will not be able to make changes to the opposition lineup or enter any stats for the opposition team. The responsibility will lie with each individual team to complete these tasks. If both is selected, associations will also need to select whether clubs get access to make edits to the opposition team before or after the game start time. If associations grant access before the game, they will also need to select the amount of hours clubs will have access prior to the game start time. A maximum of 48 hours can be given. Please be aware that if access is given prior to the game starting, the opposition has access to view the other team's lineup and make changes to the lineup. If possible, it is a good idea to at least allow clubs to enter lineups for both teams once a game is finished to ensure clubs can enter all the necessary batting, bowling, and fielding statistics. Electronic scoring allows clubs to score a game in real time. If the device they are using is connected to the internet, spectators can follow along live on public sites. Clubs can be granted access to electronically score any games at their club via the setting here. Electronic scoring will be covered off in more detail in later training sessions. Lineups selected by clubs will be published on public sites. Associations have 3 options as to when these lineups will be published. In junior grades, it is quite common for more than one game to be played at the same time on the same oval. Using the ground percentage setting will ensure you do not have any fixture clashes for these games. For example, if 2 games can be played on the same oval at the same time, select 50% from the drop-down list. This may be a setting you only turn on at the time you create these junior grades. Game permits allows a club to add a player to their lineup who has not registered to their club but are registered in the season to another club. PlayHQ will check whether the player meets the criteria for the team they are being added to. Please note, unlike season permits, game permits do not require approval. This setting should be turned off if associations don't want players moving between clubs without their approval. Player points is used in a lot of senior competitions and ensures the competition is balanced, with each player being assigned a point value based on the association rules. If player points is turned on, players must be assigned a player point before they can be added to a lineup. Associations can set a player points team cap and select whether this team cap will be enforced or not. If the team cap is enforced, teams will not be able to save their player lineups if their total player points is over this cap. Associations have the ability to edit an individual team's cap if one or more teams in your competition has been given special consideration. Player points visibility determines whether an individual's player points can be viewed on public sites. If set to visible, the public will be able to view how many player points each player has been assigned. Finals eligibility gives associations the ability to determine how many games a player must play in the regular season in order to be eligible to play finals. If a player does not meet the amount of games entered, they will not be able to be added to a lineup for a finals game. Associations can give individuals player exemptions outside of this eligibility if needed. Both associations and clubs have the ability to view how many games a player has played throughout the season. Once you are happy with your settings, select Create Competition.